Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this Overwatch Let's Play. I said I would upload more videos playing with Orisa on different maps, and so I'm following through with that. And I had a bunch of footage recorded of her on different maps, and then Blizzard goes and changes her. So let's talk about the changes and talk about map usage and things like that, as well as other topics. So thankfully, the only change Blizzard made to Orisa at this point is they reduced her clip size by 50. She used to have 200 ammo. Now she has 150. So you might think it's not big of a deal, and I actually don't think it is. I didn't have a problem with the 200 clip size, but I do believe 150 is more reasonable. But it is barely noticeable if you're a person who reloads whenever you get the opportunity. Now, most times you won't be taking up an entire clip to kill an enemy, so her large clip size from the beginning already seemed like it was for mostly taking on multiple enemies at once. Not necessarily like crowd control, but just to be able to stay in the game a little bit longer and provide some more offense. 200 gave her a lot of room to be able to do that, and I wish that Zenyatta actually gave me the healing that I need, but I should have just backed away and looked for a health pack instead. Anyway, 200 gave her a lot of room to be able to stay offensively in a fight for a long time. 150 seems a little bit more balanced if you're considering that aspect of what the fusion driver is actually for. Now, I've seen a lot of conversation talking about Orisa's gun is too powerful. It provides too much DPS. She is a tank, and Blizzard is designing her as an anchor tank. But I think people are actually criticizing the relationship between her being pretty easy to take down, but she's offensively able to hold her own. But you have to think about Reinhardt. Reinhardt can hold his own as well if you're using him correctly. He does a ton of damage. The difference is that it's melee damage. So the way you have to approach Orisa is a little bit differently, because you have to also remember that her shield is deployable but is not attached to her like Reinhardt's shield. So if you could get her from behind the shield, now you've already got an extra advantage. And that's with anybody. If you could get anybody from behind her shield, it's a bit more advantageous. Whereas with Reinhardt, he could just move with everybody. Whereas Orisa, you have to wait until the cooldown to actually change the position of your shield. This is much different than somebody like D.Va, where D.Va and Winston, for example, they are meant to be harassers. They are, you know, as the Blizzard says, D.Va, Winston, like, they're meant to get in, get out, harass. They're not meant to do DPS. Now, granted, Roadhog in all of this is I think, the anomaly of the tanks. He is basically a DPS tank. But Reinhardt can still do damage if you're close enough, right? So I don't think there's necessarily a problem with the amount of damage that Orisa is outputting. Now, yes, when she drops the ultimate, does she do a ton of damage? Yes, but that's the point of the ultimate. That's a 50% increase in damage versus, you know, Mercy's damage increase 30%. So it's designed to do exactly what it's doing. And right here, this enemy Orisa just melted me because of the help of the ultimate, and of course the Zenyatta Transcendence. Where I think Orisa might be too powerful, and again, we're over here theorizing a little bit, you know, based on the top level, based on the lowest level of play. She might be too powerful considering we're currently in a tank meta. Like, it seems... This all seems kind of weird because we're in a tank meta right now where tanks, you basically need to pick 3 tanks and you're gonna have a little bit of an easier time, taking away the idea you can actually play the tanks, right? So we're in this tank meta, and then Blizzard adds another tank. So imagine Reinhardt, Orisa, Zarya, lots of shields. Throw in D.Va with her defense matrix, and then the buff to that, and that seems like a hard quad tank combo to break, right? But then you think about Reinhardt, Zarya, Roadhog, Orisa. Like somewhere in there in the previous combo I mentioned before, like you gotta have some DPS. So you got Orisa, but could you really say that Orisa does that much DPS? Because at that point you only have 2 spots left, right? So we're already in this tank meta, and we're like, oh, Blizzard's created another tank. So now we're just gonna have 4 tanks. Yeah, but then that only leaves 1 spot for DPS, maybe 1 spot for a healer. Yeah, that doesn't make sense. 2 spots for a healer? Do you really think Orisa does that much DPS? And even if Zarya ends up getting fully charged, I mean, do you really think Zarya and Orisa are going to hold down all the DPS for a team? I just don't see that working. So yeah, so then you think about, Reinhardt, Zarya, Roadhog, Orisa. I just don't think that's as appealing anymore when you're sacrificing so much DPS in a sense. Even Roadhog, you get the hook. But then it's like, okay, so do we need Orisa and Reinhardt if we already getting Roadhog with hooks? We have Zarya with the bubbles. I just don't see it as viable. Orisa's not exactly the most mobile of characters, right? But the other piece we also have to consider is why the tank meta is so relevant and prevalent right now, and that's because of Ana. Part of that definitely is because of Ana. She heals so much to the tanks. She is basically the tank healer. Like, Mercy doesn't heal enough in times. Zenyatta certainly doesn't. Lucio, not by himself. But Ana's been nerfed. She was nerfed in the PTR. In the PTR, we are talking about the PTR. But a nerf is coming for Ana. And it's a big nerf. We'll talk about that in another video. I'm going to make another video for Ana. But she's been nerfed. And now things start to become a little bit more interesting. This perhaps opens the door for more interesting usage of the tanks without an overwhelming dependence on the tanks. Because if the tanks can't get healed as quickly, that allows for more DPS to have a presence. And we know DPS are generally supposed to be able to take out tanks, and tanks are supposed to be slow moving, and DPS should be able to not necessarily run circles around them, but work well enough together to take on tanks. And so I think all of these changes, Bastion, Ana, the inclusion of Orisa, I think they're all working together at this point to actually change the meta. As I get 30 limbs, mind you. So this would be really interesting. I'm really interested to see like how Orisa is eventually going to change up the game. We're gonna see a lot more barriers. People are gonna experiment with that. So how far will the changes with Bastion, the inclusion of more barriers, the nerfing of Ana all come together to create a different type of Overwatch? So there's my musings on Orisa. Hopefully you saw some different ways you could use Orisa on Hollywood defense, and I'll have an Ana video up soon. See you later.